Andrew Canter is the CIO of Future Growth Asset Management, and you've been doing some work on ethics within financial services, or more particularly within the investment community. Before we go there, CFA, it's a highly reputable and respected qualification.
So the CFA, Chartered Financial Analyst designation, which is administered by the CFA Institute, is a global standard both of investment credentials, technical credentials, but also ethical standards and best practices in the industry. They're key proponents of ethics in the industry. It's a core part of the curriculum, part of their testing procedure, and one of the things the industry really stands for.
Yeah, and it's a tough qualification to get. And if you are in a crooked firm and you've got a CFA, you better leave the crooked firm because you don't want to lose it.
Yeah, and that's true. In fact, every time there's any sort of corrupt behavior that becomes public in South Africa, we do a quick check to see if there are any CFA charter holders, candidates in those firms, and rarely are they. Rarely. It does happen, but it's a really nice sign to see that the people who have had some basic training in ethics know when to run.
So ethics is a very important part of being a CFA, and you like to survey and see what the CFAs themselves think. There have been some international surveys. What did they discover?
Managing people's money is really an ethics thing. I mean, people, they want good investment returns, but actually first they want to make sure the money's being looked after by somebody they trust. That's just core. But that being taken as read, a recent survey earlier this year, about 4 or 5 months ago, of 1,200 financial services professionals in the US and UK asked a series of ethical questions. And we actually echoed some of those questions at the CFA South Africa conference in Johannesburg last month to see how local players thought about ethics and whether it was the same as what global players were thinking. So I think we should maybe have a dialogue about that. Can I give you some statistics?
Yeah, well, let's start with the first of those important questions.
Sure. So interestingly, of the global 1,200 people surveyed in the US and UK, 47% of the people surveyed found that believed that their competitors engaged in unethical or illegal activity to get ahead. So 40% of people believe their competitors were cheating. In the South African context, as many as 58% of the about 100 people surveyed said the same thing. They were indicting their competitors, indicting the industry around them. So 58% is a scary number.
And particularly that it's out of line with global averages.
Well, and higher than global averages, which is a little bit surprising. But maybe there's a lot of stuff going on in South Africa. Maybe there's a bit of rot going on at the moment.
Do you agree with that? You're in the same industry.
Well, no, I don't. Not in the financial service industry. Broadly speaking, when I look at the FSB regulations, when I look at testing requirements, requirements for educational credentials are going up and up and up here. As I say, as being a board member of CFA South Africa, we rarely see a lot of malfeasance, certainly among CFA charter holders. And by the way, statistically, probably not even in the broader financial service industry. So I don't agree with that. But I want to be clear, there is, particularly, and I'm on the buy side of the business. So buy side, what is that? That's the pension fund trustees, their consultants, their asset managers, their multi-managers, and their service providers. My view is that probably 90% of this business, of the people in this business, are straight and ethical and honest, doing a good, diligent job in an ethical and fiduciary manner. And then there's 10% who think it's a game and it's about what they can line their pockets with. And it's those 10% that really create a problem.
All right. So they felt that the competitors were bad, but what about their fellow employees?
So interestingly, of the 1,200 US and UK people surveyed, 23% believed it's likely that their fellow employees engaged in illegal or unethical.
So they work for better firms than the market as a whole.
Of course, yes, everybody believes they're better. Now, thankfully, in the South African context, only 14% said yes. But I must say, this question I could see in the room caused a bit of head scratching about people who knew they were ethical, but they really had to question their colleagues. But still, 23% globally, 14% locally. It's still not a good number. It doesn't make you feel warm and fuzzy.
The last question of the three that you focused on is the one that perhaps is the most relevant of them. That the respondents were asked, do you have to be crooked to get ahead?
Right. So the global data says that nearly 1 in 5, or 20% of the respondents, felt that in the financial services business, you must sometimes engage in illegal or unethical activity in order to get ahead. 20% said you have to do it on occasion. Now, interestingly, the South African data was the same. 20% of that audience of 100 people felt that sometimes you have to cheat. And that's pretty daunting. That means that 20% of the time a bribe will be paid. 20% of the time you will go over the line and give the excessive gift or engage in unethical or illegal activity just to get the job done. That to me is the most worrying thing. It's a statement of intent or a statement of a basic acceptance of how the market is. And in order to get on in the world, I need to do this thing.
But Andrew, if they'd written that in their exams, given that ethics is such a big part of the CFA, then they would clearly have failed the exams. But in the real world, they're saying, well, our exams might be suggesting that we should be ethical, but the reality is different.
So I want to be generous spirited, and we were very careful when we did this survey. We did a pure analog. It wasn't by cell phone SMS response. It was on paper with tick the box, because you wanted an honest answer from people. And I must say, just because 20% of the people said that sometimes you have to do it, doesn't mean they do it. It means they're saying there may be a time when I have to turn down business because I won't do it. I want to be generous spirited about that answer. I know that Future Growth and other firms take that view. We will do good business or we will do no business. We won't pay the bribe, but we know that people ask for it. I acknowledge I'm part of that 20%. I know that sometimes it happens to get ahead. I should do it, but we don't do it. So let us try and read that in a generous context, I think.
Define a little what unethical conduct would be?
Oh, well, look, I think on the buy side of this industry, you get everything from trustees being bribed by service providers to favor a particular product. I've heard consultants speak about purchased trustees who will sell their vote at a trustee meeting for a bit of money, or who knows, soccer tickets. That's one example. There's stories about principal officers getting kickbacks from their consulting firms. Not principal officers, trustees of funds getting kickbacks from their consulting firms, as part of the fees that are paid to the consulting firms. There's conflict in how some consulting firms provide actually asset management services while they're consulting to the fund. That's more conflict than actually straight out unethical. There's that kind of stuff. There's requests from trustees and boards of pension funds for sponsorships for annual functions, which have nothing to do with trustee education. It's all about, say, a party or a chance to get together with their mates, out of the pocket of an asset manager who is now supposed to pay this annual fee to support such a party. Then there's the petty stuff like requests for cell phone airtime, drinks, whiskey. It could extend as far down the line as you take a client out for dinner, because socializing is important in our business to have relationships. And then they get hold of the wine list, and man, it's the expensive red wine and the Johnny Walker Black all night. That's unethical, immoral, or just bad taste is a matter of judgment there. But it can extend quite far down.
Where do you draw the line?
Well, we draw the line at the FSB's rules. No more than 1,000 rand can be spent per person per year, and we keep track of that. And that is not a target; that is a limit. And that, by the way, that law applies specifically to registered persons. Therefore, it does not technically apply to pension fund trustees who are not registered reps, but we apply it. We take the view that, yes, we have to have relationships. People don't trust you to manage 100 million or a billion rand of their pension fund unless they get to know you, look in the whites of your eyes, and have a conversation with you. And sometimes that's best done over dinner. Now, a dinner must be at a reasonable place in a local place at a reasonable cost, not like let's fly to Mauritius for dinner. And people do that. Oh, let's go to Mauritius. We'll take you for an investment conference there. Or, geez, the trustees really need iPads. Let's give them iPads. We see that sort of behavior. It's outrageous behavior. I think this is not very so much in the eye of the beholder, but just really what makes good common sense.
So as someone who's very concerned about CFAs and their future, how are you going to use this information?
So obviously we're going to put it in front of the FSB for a start. I think one of the challenges is that people in the industry know a lot of stuff, but we rarely talk about it. And rarely do we. I don't think the FSB has a framework to accept this anecdotal information, because most of it's anecdotal. Those stories I've told you, it's all anecdotal. I hear it secondhand, thirdhand, from reliable sources, but it's all anecdotal. I can't take it to court. So that's a challenge. The FSB needs to have a framework for a tip line which gathers up all of this anecdotal data, and we start seeing a trend of 4 people say the same anecdotal thing about one counterparty, you know there's something wrong in that counterparty. I would tell you that when things go bust or blow up or there's a big fraud, that afterwards people will say, yeah, we knew they were up to something. I mean, I could tell you it happened with I've just forgotten the name of the guy who stole the Widows and Orphans Fund.
J. Arthur Brown.
Thank you very much. Him and his firm, the people in the industry knew there was something up there. There was weird things happening, and we said it to each other, but nobody did anything about it. Nobody reported it, and certainly the FSB didn't do anything about it, and then the money disappeared. We should have known. We should have reported it. The FSB should have had their antenna up, and they should have been looking into it before that bus hit the tree. That's what needs to go on in the future.
Andrew Canter is the Chief Investment Officer at Future Growth Asset